Yeah, so the Buddha spoke a lot about suffering, and we'll get into that. We'll get into that. Yeah. So, what else do you remember about last week's session? Da, 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 da. But I'll just sing until someone says something.
Oh, someone please talk. He first learned from the sages that were in the forest, and they were self-harming or they were testing their mind over matter.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these yogis were really powerful yogis. I mean, they, you know, if anyone's seen like the Shaolin monks and how they perform their kung fu, it really is mind over matter. They really are incredible. But the problem with the Buddha's chommies is that they were hurting themselves. They were killing themselves. Sean? They were hurting themselves. And the Buddha said, that's not the way. This is not the way. It's not the way to torture yourself. And it's also not the way to live in extreme opulence and pleasure. So Buddhism is known as the middle way between the extremes of hedonism and asceticism. Okay? Which is pretty cool, because that means we don't have to hurt ourselves. We don't have to suffer. You know, I think there's a form of meditation where you've got to sit for 10 hours a day and your back hurts and your legs hurt, and some of us have done it. I don't really enjoy that because I don't want to suffer. You know, I'd rather do nice and happy meditations where my body can handle the process. All right, I'm trying to be I try and be kind to myself. I don't feel it's necessary to hurt oneself. In Sanskrit, the word in yoga is ahimsa, you know, non-violence. So don't hurt yourself. That's what the Buddha was on about. Don't hurt yourself. Don't hurt yourself. This is hurting yourself. But also don't fall for the trap of just seeking pleasure and money and fortune and whatever. You know, you'll never find the happiness there, and you'll never find the happiness in hurting yourself. So yeah, any other sort of comments from last week's session that's come to mind for anyone? No pressure. Okay, I'm going to start singing again. Okay, cool. So then after the Buddha attained enlightenment, we spoke a little bit about what enlightenment was. It's a really big thing to talk about because a lot of different schools disagree on exactly what enlightenment is. Andrea, I love your cat. It's beautiful. Beautiful. Okay, so the Buddha actually, after he attained enlightenment, he was walking around and his friends joined him and they said, something's up with you. You're really different. What's going on? And he said, I've seen the truth. I've pierced through the veil of illusion, and I know all my past lives. I remember all of them, and I know all of your past lives too. I can see exactly who you were in every single life, going back to infinitum. Okay, and the Buddha also knew that it was going to be hard to try and teach his friends because it was just such a big thing to put in words, and he wasn't sure he could do it, you know. So in his enlightened state, he decided, his friends begged him, they said, please teach, please teach. And they asked 3 times. They asked him 3 times, please teach. And in the Buddhist tradition, it is customary, if you go to a teacher or a guru or a lama or a rinpoche, you have to ask them 3 times to teach. And if somebody asks me 3 times to teach, I am bound to teach. I'm not allowed to say no. Okay, I've taken something called a bodhisattva vow. So then I'm trapped. Then I'm stuck. Then you got me. Okay, I have to teach. And yeah, thanks, Craig, for reminding me. I have to teach. And that's my responsibility because I took a vow. So that's why when Sally asked me to teach 3 times, I was like, okay, I will, because I have to, you know. But I'm happy about it. Ancilla's asking, Mark, with the poverty that most live in, there's terrible suffering. Do they choose that? Does money not matter? Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, Ancilla. We are going to get into why people suffer in the next couple of weeks, why people are poor and why people are rich and all of that, okay? We will get into it. I promise you. I'm not going to tackle that question now. Just a surface answer. I remember I was being interviewed on TV once, a live show, and I hate live shows because, you know, you can't, if you make a mistake or say something, or you can't answer a question, you don't look like an idiot if it's not live. You can always edit that out. But a live show is difficult. And the interviewer said to me, Mark, you know, you teach meditation and mindfulness for a living, but how do you, what do you say to people living in a shack with nothing and they're so poor and they're suffering? You know, are you going to go and make them happy? And the cameras were freaking rolling, and I was stumped. I had no idea what to say. I was like, oh my God, this is the most difficult question. This person has floored me. And there was this uncomfortable silence. And then it came to me, and I said, look, I know poverty is suffering, but how can we assume that everyone that is poor is suffering more than people with money? You know, and I used the example of working in advertising and walking into the reception area, and the cleaners have a big smile on their face and say, good morning, how are you? And we have a good little conversation. And then the CEO walks past and I say, good morning. And I go, morning. You know, like they look miserable. They don't look happy. Okay. So I don't particularly believe that money makes us happy. In fact, I think it can have the opposite effect. It's nice to be comfortable, and it's nice to be financially independent, have a nice job, have a nice family, enjoy what you do, you know. But obviously for people that are suffering and can't afford it, there's a lot of things that they have that we don't have. I was talking to my cousin this morning about community, how when you're rich, your walls get higher and you don't know your neighbors. But when you're poor, you know, the community is very strong. So there's so many things that you might be rich financially, but you might be poor emotionally and lack of connection and lonely, you know. And so many rich people take antidepressants, and suicide very high, you know, because of the pressures of maintaining that lifestyle. So thanks, Ancilla, for that. We'll unpack it in the next couple of weeks. Okay. I hope you're okay with that answer. It's a tough one. So I'm going to go into the different schools of Buddhism, because from the Buddha and over time, different schools started to happen. So the first school of Buddhism is called the Hinayana, sometimes called the Theravada. Okay. Does anybody know this tradition? Anybody heard of this before and would like to comment on it? The Hinayana. Okay, so Hina means narrow, like small, and Yana means vehicle. So it means small vehicle. Okay, this is Sanskrit, Yana. Hinayana. Theravada means the school of the elders. And it's widely believed that the majority of the Buddhist students understood the Hinayana approach of what he was teaching. And the Hinayana is it's a very simple, very austere, very strict. If you become a monastic in the Hinayana tradition, you're not really a social person. You're more of a hermit. You're more of a person that would be just to sit and meditate for a lot of the day. You don't get involved with community much. It's very, you get given the Vinaya, which is a strict moral code that you have to adhere to. And yeah, life is lonely, but many people love Hinayana, and they find immense peace. The main practices of Hinayana would be just breath meditation. Okay, so what the Buddha taught was anapanasati, which means the breath meditation. Anapanasati. Sati is meditation, and anapana is breath. Okay. And it's simple. You just bring your awareness to your breathing. And then when your mind moves, you bring it back. And the Buddha said, well, that is where we build our focus. That is where we build our ability to remain on the subject of illusion, or who am I? Can you imagine just having a question like, who am I? So the Hinayana school asks that question, who are we? And they came up with, in deep investigation, through meditation, they came up with the answer that there is no self. Okay? After deep exploration, if you're a yogi or a deep meditator, you come to a point where you have a direct realization that there is no self. There's no you if you went looking for it. And modern science and mindfulness and neuroscience is also saying a very similar thing. You know, it's a certain region of the brain that feels a sense of self, the sort of egoic existence. And as we know, ego can be a bit of a problem, you know, in our lives, because we feel self-centered. You know, we think the world revolves around us. It's almost like very self-cherishing. I know ego can be helpful as well, and so on, but a lot of the time, the sense of self is our biggest problem. And the different schools approach this no self differently with different practices. So I'll explain. The Hinayana approach is like, you know, if you lost your arm, would you still be you? If you lost two arms, would you still be you? If you lost two arms and your legs, would you still be you? You know, at what point do you stop being you? And where is you? Is it your heart? Is it your head? Is it your brain? And the question stumps everybody. You know, in my mindfulness training, class 7, I get everyone to send me a letter about who they are. And the letters that I get are incredible. You know, some people say, well, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a businesswoman, I'm a runner, you know, and then some answers are like, well, I don't know, Mark, this has really upset me. I don't know who I am. And I get a lot of that answer. I am everything. I am nothing, you know. So the Buddhists would agree with that stance of who we are. We are everything and nothing. And the Buddha goes quite into some detail about that approach, which is liberating for the ego. It is the assassin of the ego, this meditation on no self. Okay, and you can find through that meditation, through your breath, who is breathing. You know, I mean, John Kabat-Zinn, who is a doctor at the University of Massachusetts, says, who is breathing? If it was up to me to be breathing, I'd be dead. I'd get a WhatsApp, forget to breathe, dead. So it's not even you that's breathing. It's your body. Your body does it automatically. You're not even breathing. So who's breathing? Okay, isn't that interesting? Yeah. You know, who's digesting? Are you even aware of what your stomach's doing right now? You know? Yeah, you need to make a poop, then you know, okay? But yeah, where are we in this process of being in a body? So the Theravada school really approaches that in a very skillful way. And I'd like to, over the next couple of weeks, maybe go there. Does anybody know what the next school, just sort of, I can't really say above Hinayana or Theravada because I'd be putting it down, but there's another school, and that's the school of the Dalai Lama's, you know, the Dalai Lama school. Anybody want to take a guess what the name is?
Is it Mahayana?
Mahayana, yebo. The great vehicle. Maha means great. Yana means vehicle. Okay? Why is it the great vehicle, Kerry?
From what I understand, the Theravada approach leads to people pursuing a solitary realized path. So to say, I don't know how to put it. And in the Mahayana, the intention is to assist all beings to enlighten.
Yay! Absolutely. Okay. So it's a different approach. And sometimes the two schools bicker about the approach because the Hinayanas will say, you know what, I don't have my shit together. So only when I'm enlightened can I be a benefit to other people. Only when I've got my shit together can I actually go out and teach and help other people. That's the Hinayana approach. And you can respect that, right? You know, how many times have you tried to help someone and you landed up hurting them? Okay. We know that. We know that. So that's their approach. Until I attain nirvana, until I attain freedom of mind and absolute happiness with no negative mental afflictions, I will then help others to reach that place. Okay? Because they feel a bit fake if they think they know the answer and they just try. It's like the blind leading the blind. Okay? That's how they feel. Whereas the Mahayana approach, which is the one I love more actually, has got a lot of heart in it. And not to say that the Hinayanas don't. I mean, the Hinayanas are just as compassionate. So don't fall into that trap. When I was in India, there was some guy walking around with a T-shirt saying, well, at least I'm not a Hinayana practitioner, you know. And that's a real diss. Like, it's just stupid because you can't be Mahayana if you are not practicing the foundation of Hinayana, okay? Hinayana is the foundation of Mahayana. So you can't divorce the two. So yes, of course, the Mahayanists believe that we need to attain enlightenment. And in that place, we will be of great benefit, perfect benefit. We will perfect ourselves. But the approach is different. So we're talking about ego. You know? So the Hinayanas destruct the ego by unpacking where's the self, where's me, who is breathing. And the Mahayanists have an interesting approach where they go, I am going to understand that there's no difference between me and the other. Whatever I do for somebody else, I'm doing for me. Okay, that's their approach. So this idea of separation between me and you is an illusion. Okay, and don't confuse. Buddhism doesn't say we are all one. They don't say we all one. We all have different mind streams, okay? But we all have Buddha nature. So they say because we have Buddha nature, we all will become Buddhas one day. That's what the Buddha said. You will all be liberated. It might be another billion years from now, and you might have, millions of lives still to go, but one day you will be liberated. That's the Mahayana approach. And we will serve other beings. We will be kind to them. We will love them. And in that, our ego will be deconstructed because it won't be about myself. It'll be about them. And the big approach is that, you know what, if you're having a bad day, go and find someone else who's having a bad day and take care of them. And you'll be okay. So I tried that. I visited prisons and hospice. I did some work at hospice. I did some work in prisons. I can tell you, when I get home and I came home to my family, I was like, damn, my life is peachy compared to that dude who's in jail for 20 years, And then you kind of feel good about your life. You feel some sort of gratitude and you don't moan so much. So there's a lot of brilliant psychology within the Mahayana system and it's the best thing for depression. They say one of the number one things for depression is to get a little pet, to get a dog, because it's not about you anymore. Now you're looking after the dog. Okay. So that's kind of the approach. I am going to attain enlightenment with everybody else. I am going to help people. I don't know what I'm doing, but my intention is pure. And in that, we're gonna get there together. You know, and the Dalai Lama is a prime example of the Mahayana approach, because did I talk about the Dalai Lama and how they find him last week? Sorry, I'm teaching two groups, so I get confused. Did I talk about how they find the Dalai Lama? Unless you all have amnesia. I've got to get my shit together. You see that? So I see Shay's here. How's it, Shay? And Juliana. Nice to see all these friends. Thank you for joining. Some old friends, some new friends. So where are we?
No, you didn't talk about how they found him, Mark.
Okay. So this is really interesting, and it feeds into the idea of reincarnation once again. And for me, it's probably the closest thing to evidence. Well, it is evidence. When the 13th Dalai Lama died, when was that? Probably 90 years ago. Okay, 13th Dalai Lama, he's dying, and he writes a letter to his disciples in Tibet at the Potala Palace. Has there anybody been to the Potala Palace in Tibet? I'd love to go there. I think I'm going to go in November. You been there, Andrea? No? Okay. Beautiful. Except the Chinese have desecrated it. They're trying to destroy Buddhism in Tibet. You know, they murdered 2 million Tibetans out of 6 million. I think we spoke about that. Yeah, they bombed the monasteries from the air. 6,000 monasteries were flattened by air fire. Can you imagine? 6,000. Why monasteries? Monasteries don't have heat-seeking missiles and freaking ammo, right? Sacred text and beautiful artwork was destroyed. 2 million people were murdered. Monks and nuns were murdered in the street. For goodness sakes, why is this such a threat to communism? It's a big threat. Big threat, because people are liberated through this process. And the communist regime does not want your mind to be liberated. They want to control your mind. So anything with meditation or yoga or spirituality is flattened, arrested. So if you're walking around today in Tibet with a photograph of the Dalai Lama, there's a good chance they'll throw you into jail. And there was a monk who was, and he was in Chinese prison for 11 years for supporting the Dalai Lama. When he escaped, he went to the Dalai Lama in Dharamsala, and the Dalai Lama said to him, "What was the thing that you feared the most in your captivity?" And he said, "The thing I feared the most was losing my compassion for the Chinese. Losing my compassion for these bastards." That's an incredible mind. And you can see the power in that mind. It's like, oh, poor me. Oh, no, he's not thinking that. He's a Mahayana practitioner. He's going, I don't want to lose my compassion here. I've got to keep my love for these guys. Can we do that in the face of a shit boss or a, traffic load shedding jam? Think about that state of mind. It's immensely powerful. And it's your happiness. That's pure mental health. That's what's going to get you through anything and everything. And I know, like, Megan works with little doggies and helps them and finds them homes and is doing wonderful charity work. That's Mahayana, okay? Whether it's for animals, humans, yourself, don't forget yourself in the equation, okay? And don't be a fool. Don't start like giving away all your money and serving humanity, but forgetting your needs. That's crazy. So you are also a sentient being, and you need to love yourself just as much. Mahayana is a beautiful path. And it's the path of the Dalai Lamas. And the Dalai Lama, reincarnation. Geez, how's those vervet monkeys in my brain? There's thousands of them. I digress. Sorry. Where was I? So, If you watch a movie called Kundun, it's by Martin Scorsese. Excellent, excellent, excellent. On the life of the Dalai Lama. Just pop the name in the chat. Kundun means presence, the presence. And the Tibetans called the 14th Dalai Lama the presence, because when you are in his company, and I've been in his company 3 times, there's an overwhelming, heart-opening experience that I cannot describe to you. And the tears just pour out of my eyes. And I don't know why. He touched me once, he put a scarf around my neck, and I was finished. Just pure love, pure. And I believe he's a living Buddha, okay? The Tibetans believe that he is a living, enlightened being. So when the 13th Dalai Lama passes away, 13th Dalai Lama leaves a letter, come and find me in 6 years. I will be reborn in the province of Amdo. And I will have a mother and father, and I will have brothers and sisters. And the houses have green roof, like really detailed. And then after about 5-6 years, his monks start having visions in their dreams of this house. They can see the house in their dream. And then they go looking. And in the movie, you'll see 2 monks knock on the door, and they pretend that they need a place to sleep for the night. And the mother of the house says, the Dalai Lama's mom, the little Dalai Lama is 6 years old. They say, can we come in? And the boy comes up to the monks and goes, yay, you found me. Take me back to my monastery. Take me back. That's what he says to the monks. So the monks go, okay, hold on. And the mom's like, what's going on? And then what they do is they have 9 implements. Is implements the right word? They have walking stick from 13th Dalai Lama. Then they have some random walking stick. They put it together. They have spectacles from the 13th Dalai Lama. Then they have some generic spectacles. And they lay all these things out, all these objects that the 13th Dalai Lama used to own. And they ask the little boy, which one is yours? And he chooses all 9 that belong to the 13th Dalai Lama. No mistake. And they run more tests, obviously. It's not just that, okay? Because, you could have had lucky 9 guesses. And then they take him and they make him the king or the prince of the country at that age. He is now the ruler of Tibet, spiritual, religious, and political. I mean, that's incredible pressure for a child. Some would say brutal. But if you look at the Dalai Lama today, he is genius. He has done what he's done in the world is mind-blowing. And did I mention the movie that's on Netflix with him and Bishop Desmond Tutu? Did I mention that last time? If you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor. It's so cool. I'm trying to. Does anybody know the name? I'm trying to find a.
Mission Joy.
Mission Joy. Yeah. Mission Joy. Mission Joy on Netflix. You have to watch it soon because they give the whole history of Archbishop Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama. And it's so much fun to watch because they are like 2 little boys and they pull each other's ears and they laugh. And you really get a feeling that they are enlightened. You really do. I also believe Nelson Mandela was a Buddha, I do. We were talking about it this morning, the miracle of being South African. We had angels, everything was going on at a very crucial time in our country. We really did. We were surrounded by Buddhas. I believe that. Buddhas are everywhere. They can be, okay? But you won't see them until you start to drop your veil more and more. So Buddhism is about working towards seeing them. Buddhas all around us. Even you guys, one of you could be a Buddha on this call. I wouldn't know. And you might just be humoring me, asking funny questions as like to guide the process. That's very possible. Okay, that's very possible. You could call angels even. I know my teacher calls calls angels, but bodhisattvas. So in the Mahayana, Mother Teresa, absolutely, Mahatma Gandhi. I mean, I think we've had so many. So in the Mahayana tradition, when the Dalai Lama is found, so the Dalai Lama makes a pledge that he will return over and over again to us to help us to be liberated. He says, until space endures, until sentient beings remain, I too will remain to dispel the miseries of the world. That's probably his famous quote, the most famous quote. He will give up the bliss of enlightenment, the bliss of nirvana, the bliss of heaven, to come into a body, a mortal body, and suffer flu and colds and stress so that he can teach us and liberate us. I have a feeling that each and every one of you has been taught by the Dalai Lama, not in this life perhaps, but in many previous lives. Okay? And he keeps coming back. And if we make that connection, we'll be part of that process. And then we're out of here. Okay? Then you don't have to die anymore. You don't have to suffer anymore. You're just pure consciousness bliss. And you can choose if you want to come back to earth. You can choose if you want a light body. You can choose what you can come back as a dog, you can come back as a cow, you can come back as a king, a rock star. I think Dave Grohl from Foo Fighters, probably also another Buddha. John Lennon, my cousin's into rap music. So, I mean, wherever you find your Buddha is there with a message for you. Keep your eyes open. Christianity, interesting. So the more I studied Buddhism, the more I understood Christianity, strangely enough. Yeah. I gave the middle finger to the church when my father died of suicide, and they said that he had gone to hell. And I didn't believe that for 1 minute. But then I was so angry at Christianity. The more I studied Buddhism, the more I understood Christianity. So I think the interesting thing about it is I've spent some recent time with a Catholic priest, Father Vishal, who's an Indian priest and is well studied in Buddhism, the Vedas, and yogic philosophy. That's his job. The church expects him to know this. They send him on retreats to India to further his study of the Vedas. He's a Catholic priest studying different traditions, which is mind-blowing. Even Muslim traditions and Judaism, and he's well studied. And he says, you know what, Mark, at the end of the day, there are mystical schools within Christianity that the Christians don't know about. I mean, there's a mystic called Meister Eckhart, who was a Catholic priest, who was a mystic. And if you study Meister Eckhart, a German priest, he lived in the 1800s. If you study his works, it's Buddhism. It's Buddhism. But he had no contact with Buddhism. If you study Thomas Merton, it's Buddhism. The mystical schools of Christianity is pure Buddhism. Promise you. It's pure Buddhism. So there's no division really at the end of the day when you find that truth. The difference between Buddhism and Christianity is that Buddhism doesn't believe in a creator being this dude in the sky with a white beard sort of controlling everything, okay? The Buddhists say what Jesus said, what you sow, you will reap. That is the premise of Buddhism. And when I talk to Christians about that, when I talk about it with their thoughts, they say, no, it doesn't work on thoughts. That's something else. I said, no, what you sow, you reap works with everything. Everything. That's karma. Okay, so what's the next school up from Mahayana? That's the third school. Anybody know? It's
Tantrayana.
Yeah, boy. Thanks, Cakes. It has many names. Some call it Tantra, Tantrayana, Tantric vehicle. When I say Tantric, everyone goes, ooh, sexy time. Yay. Let's do Tantric sex. There is an element of that, okay? Because in Tantra, you're allowed to have a partner and you're allowed to make love to them and to visualize them as an angel. And that's part of the practice. Isn't that beautiful? You actually merging method and wisdom as you have that intercourse. But that's a small part of the Tantrayana. In the Buddhist terms, they call it Vajrayana. So in the yogic schools, they'll say Tantrayana. Buddhism, we call it Vajrayana. Anybody know what a Vajra is? Okay, Vajra means diamond. Diamond vehicle, diamond way. Okay, so we've got Hinayana, which is narrow scope, and I don't want to be derogatory by saying narrow. It's just narrow because I'm going to attain enlightenment for myself. That's it. Then number 2, Mahayana. I'm going to attain enlightenment for everybody because I love them all, and we're inseparable in many ways. You know, if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't be here. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here. And that's Ubuntu, isn't it? African Ubuntu. I am because you are. So there's a deep understanding of interdependence with the Mahayana school, that we need each other, that we have to work together, you know, because of Ubuntu. It's very, very profound. And we'll study further the interdependent origination of reality. And then the Vajrayana is part of the Mahayana. It's within the Mahayana. So the Dalai Lama is a Vajrayana practitioner, but he's also Mahayana. Okay, so you need to be a Mahayana practitioner. You need to want to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all beings in order to practice Tantra. And Tantra has an interesting angle of destructing the ego. Very fascinating. So I'm also a Tantrayana. I practice Tantra. And some of you I've shared some tantric meditations with. And it's really cool if you have a partner, a spiritual partner that can practice with you. That's just first prize. That's beautiful. Because in the Tantrayana, they say that enlightenment, you need a partner. You will get enlightenment faster with the right partner. Isn't that amazing? So at some point, a Mahayana monk might feel that they want to become a yogi, and they will not wear their robes anymore. They may look strange, they may act strange, they may even feel crazy to you, but they are practicing Vajrayana. And it's the fastest way to enlightenment, but it's also the most dangerous. Why is it dangerous? Anyone know why it's dangerous?
Because if you've got a partner, there's an attachment there.
Okay, yeah, that's possible, but you also don't need a partner for Tantra. It's not necessary. But yes, I agree with you. The danger is that your ego can get in the way. So with Tantra, you get given a deity, an angel, like Tara, you know, Holy Mother Tara, or the Buddha of Compassion, Chenrezig, or there's so many different deities, Vajra Yogini, Mahakala, Vajrapani, you know, all these iconic figures, shapes, but they're not real, okay? Yes, they are real, but they're not. And it's the same as you. Yes, you're real, but you're not, okay? So you get given a deity, and then you recite thousands of mantras, and you visualize this deity, and then you get initiated by your guru. And in that initiation, you are told to imagine yourself as being the deity. So you're no longer Megan, you're no longer Shay, you're no longer Juliana. You are now the high goddess, Mother Tara. And you visualize yourself as her. Even if I'm a man, my practice is to visualize myself as Tara, as a woman. It's kind of weird. I've got a really nice body. So I visualize myself as Tara, right? And that really messes with my head, with my ego. Okay. Hey, Pam. Yeah, there are energies. It is about energy. And when you're working with Tantra, yoga, the practice of yoga, asana, is Tantra. Because you're not only visualizing yourself as a holy divine being, which you are, it's just your illusion that stops you from knowing that, okay? They say when the Dalai Lama looks in the mirror, he sees the angel of compassion, Chenrezi. That's what he sees, but we see him as an old man. That's a tough one to chew on, okay? So when you condition your mind to see yourself as an angel, you are planting the seeds to see yourself as an angel, and your ego dies. Because now you're not Keri anymore, you're not Reshma anymore, you're an angel. And all the things that come with Keri and Reshma dissolve. And you are spacious, and you are vast, and you are eternal. And you stop identifying with your meat cage. You know, I call it a meat cage. It's a prison that we're stuck in, this body. Even if it's glorious and it's wonderful, but we're going to get sick and die. You know, the Tibetans call it Keganachi. Keganachi. Birth, sickness, old age, and death. That's not fun. None of that's fun. The Buddha said, guys, you don't understand. This is terrible. You're in a situation that's prison. You're stuck in a meat cage. Get out of it, and you can do whatever you want to do. So Vajrayana is breaking free from the meat cage. When you condition your mind to believe that you are a being of light, well, you'll become a being of light, and you'll start to see beings of light. Now, how did these three schools, which seem so vastly, and yet you're doing it for the benefit of all beings. So you're becoming Goddess Tara to help others. You're not becoming Goddess Tara to say, oh, look at me, I'm Goddess Tara, you know, because then that's ego. Then it's an ego trap. Then you messed up. And that's why it's dangerous, because you can really go on an ego trip and it can wreck your life. And you're also working with subtle energies of the body. So when you're doing yoga and breath work, pranayama, if you are not taught that stuff correctly, and if you're not practicing an ethical life, you can literally go insane. Okay? There's something called lung, L-U-N-G, and it's a pranic imbalance. And it happens to people on retreat often. I've spoken to many, many retreatants, and they say it's real. It's a proper thing, where your prana, your kundalini starts to awaken, which is a big subject. But once that kundalini rises into your chakras, if you're not ready for it, it's going to cook you. It's going to fry you. And that's why they call it the Vajrayana. Very fast, lots of outer and inner techniques, but you better have a good teacher, and you better know what you're doing, and you better be practicing kindness and compassion and studying wisdom. And that's why in the monastic tradition, it takes 20 years of monastic study to eventually be welcomed into the mandala of Tantrayana. But in this age, everything's backwards, because everyone's doing yoga and they don't know that they are practicing the highest yoga tantra. So it's backwards. It's all flipped around. We're living in an age of flipping around. And I think it's good news, actually, because it means that we have a good opportunity. We don't have to be a monastic for 20 years. We can be a husband, a wife, a lover, a friend, and we can still attain enlightenment if we understand and practice the Tantrayana and the Mahayana. Yeah. So I hope that makes sense. I see it's 10 o'clock. So I think it's time to get on with our days. Any questions before we close? Is there anything on your mind?
Is this last concept, Tantrayana, similar to what would Jesus do? You're trying to keep that nature and get in tune with the deity that you've been designated.
Yes, as I said, the Buddha speaks through you, and it's a brilliant question. So in Christianity, Jesus is your deity. And we know in the mystical schools of Christianity, there's something called stigmata, where meditators and yogis, they have the mark, they have holes in their hands and feet from the crucifixion, because they are becoming Christ. Their body is changing because of their practice. I know this is mind-blowing. When I studied Tantrayana, I understood Christianity better. The Holy Sacrament, where Jesus said, take this is my body, and eat it. Drink this is wine, my blood. This is my blood, drink it. I believe that Jesus was saying, become me. You can be me. Eat my flesh and become me. Drink my blood and you are me. And that is the Holy Sacrament that is practiced every Sunday in church. And it's like the big moment, of that experience. And it's pure Tantra in my eyes. It's pure Tantra, it's like the best thing. And Jesus dying on the cross and saying, I am dying for the sins of the world. Pure Mahayana, 100% Mahayana. I am taking on all of your pain as I die. That's a Tibetan meditation called Tonglen. That's what he was doing. So the similarities are astounding between different religions and traditions. So I'm trying to keep an open framework here where I'm not just celebrating Buddhism, I'm celebrating all spiritual paths, because it really does lead to the same place and it really overlaps in so many ways. So happy to talk more about that. Any other questions? Ultimately, God realization, recognition of the divine in us. Absolutely, that's what the word namaste means. The light in me, the enlightenment, the Buddha in me greets the Buddha in you, That's, if you go to Nanhua Temple, they say, Amitofo, Amitofo. That's in Taiwanese. Amitofo means Buddha of light. So they're going, hello, Buddha of light. And then, yes, hello, Buddha of light. But in our language, we say good morning. I'd much prefer to say, hello, angel of light, to everyone. And that's Tantra. We don't even say good morning. We say morning. We've even dropped the good out of morning, So what is morning? Yeah, it's morning. I know it's morning. So what? What kind of greeting is that?
Mark, can I ask a question quick?
Yes, sure, Shay.
And it might sound like a silly question, so excuse my ignorance. But the Buddha statues.
Yeah.
The Buddha statues and then the laughing Buddha.
Yes.
Where does that come from, and which Buddha is that? And yeah.
So there was never such a Buddha like that. So as Buddhism moved through the world, the handsome Indian Prince Siddhartha changed because the Chinese didn't resonate with an Indian guy. So they made a Chinese guy, and they said, well, fat people are happy, because whenever that was their culture. Fat people were wealthy and happy. So they said, let's make him Chinese and let's make him fat. And then people will connect to that, image more. So that's where the fat Buddha comes from. There never was a fat Buddha like that. That wasn't Siddhartha Gautama, It's the same as Jesus. Jesus was a brown Arab, he was a brown Arab. And now if you're going to churches in Europe, he's blonde. No, he was never blonde. It can't be. But you see, it changes as the religion moves into different cultures to adapt to that culture. And you find that in Buddhism especially. But the core of the teachings never changes. The core of Christianity would never change. It's just a symbol. Hope that answers your question, Shay.
Can I also just ask a question?
Yes, of course, Juliana.
Okay. In Buddhism, is there any distinguishing between different sexes, female, male, whatever, or is there absolutely no referral to that?
Sure, it's a really big question. Yeah, I'll have to answer that from a tantric point of view. So the reason why we male or female is because of our karma, of our energy. But they say that a Buddha is androgynous. Is that the right word? Androgynous? They don't have a sex. So a Buddha is perfectly balanced in those energies. So in Tantrayana, our job is to balance our male and female energies. So that we don't identify with being a man, or we don't identify with being a woman, and you'll find within the Buddhist art that you cannot often tell, is it a woman or is it a man? You don't know. And it's because of that, they try to not get us into that polarity, because it's polarity. The illusion that we live in is duality, polarity. That is an illusion. But our karma brings us into a body because our minds are stuck in polarity and duality. And if we can break free of that, we become liberated. Our energies are balanced. Because if you've got too much masculinity, not great. Too much femininity, no, not great. We know we need a bit of masculinity, we need a bit of femininity. Everybody loves a man that's in touch with his feminine side. You know what I mean? Not everyone, but anyway. Andrea?
Sorry,
you,
you
Mark.
just made me think of something in terms of what you were speaking about. So how would you explain the current increased level of awareness of young people, especially Gen Zs and millennials, around social issues like being male and female and stereotypes around that? Because there's a lot of pushback within that. How do you explain that?
Well, I have my dear friend, Grant Nash. Some of you will know him. He's gay, and he celebrates it like you can't believe, because he says, we're actually moving into people are being born that don't associate with this. And a lot of people don't understand it, but in a way, these kids don't have an identity. They do, but they have the freedom to choose their identity. That is awesome. That's awesome. We never had that. We were told, this is your box and you stay in your box. And as we progress, as consciousness, as you say, is awakening, this is a special time. We are in a dark time, but there's a window that's opening. There's a window, and we can attain enlightenment within this window. And I think signs are all around us. So it's really special.
Yeah, Mark, if I can add to that, I think it's actually a time where things are just moving very fast, and they have no identity, so they don't have to get rid of an identity to get the balance. They can just move to it much quicker.
Yeah, totally. So that's it. I mean, sit with your breath practice this week and ask who is breathing. Okay, who's breathing? Megan?
I just want to add something. You touched very briefly on a collective consciousness, and I think ideally what's this old soul here, what's happening in the world is that our collective consciousness with regards to us being light beings is growing stronger. You were talking about past lives, etc., etc. And one thing all religions and science can agree on is that we are all energy. The one thing that cannot be destroyed is energy. Whether you want to look at that as a collective consciousness or in any theory that religion or religious practice passes on, we are all energy. So what is happening with regards to people becoming aware of genders, light and dark, is consciousness. Our consciousnesses are awakening, and with that, we are all coming to the realization that we are one, and this energy is growing as such, and people are embracing it. And I think that is ultimately what you are trying to make us all aware of. It doesn't matter what our beliefs are, it's that we are energy, and whether our energy is a new energy, an old energy, it's always been there, and collectively we can choose to use that for good or bad. And Buddhism is the ultimate choice of using that energy for self-sacrifice, but while still preserving yourself to pour back goodness into the world. And that's Megan's 2 cents. She's going to keep it quiet now. I'm going to go back into her dark corner while she's still in her PJs with her hair in a messy bun.
Oh well, we don't mind PJs and messy buns here. This is not a fashion show. Megan, that was spot on. That was really spot on. And recently, someone gave a presentation on quarks. Quark is the tiniest form of matter. It's tinier than the atom, the quark, and we are all just quarks. Everything is made up of quarks, according to metaphysics. So if you think of it, like that just blew my mind. Like we're all the same substance, just impermanent and changing, but we're all just quarks, And I love how metaphysics and Buddhism sort of connects on that level. That yes, we are one in terms of that, that energy. And I think as we raise our vibration, everything changes externally. You see, this is the premise of Tantra. As soon as you your mind starts to change, your vibration starts to change, you start to see a different world. Okay? Start to see world differently. So yeah. I think let's call it there, hey? I'm off to Franschhoek today. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. Thanks for joining, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Namaste.
Thanks,
Namaste, Mark. Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste, and send Franschhoek my love. It's one of my favorites.
I will. I haven't been there in a while. So yeah.
Cheers,
That's around the corner from me.
Lovely question.
Enjoy.
Lovely, engagement. That's really great. It makes for a good session. Thank you, and we'll see you then. Bye. Lots of love.
Thanks so much. Bye.